What is up, Minnesota soccer fans, and welcome in. This is our Soda Soccer Super Show. We're doing things a little bit different tonight. I was out at TCO Stadium covering the Minnesota Aurora USLW League Cup final last night, so we weren't able to do a straight post-game show for that, nor a straight post-game show for Minnesota United. So a day later, we are combining both of these shows into one sort of super show. We'll go over Aurora first for the first 35, 40 minutes, and then we'll switch over and talk Minnesota United and their 2-1 win. But to help me cover the Aurora aspect of this, I am very, very pleased to welcome in goalkeepers coach, Cassie Ulrich. Cassie, how are you? Thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, I'm good, Jeremy. Really appreciate you having me on tonight. Really happy to be here.
Well, I very much appreciate you having you on just in general, but also considering we're less than 24 hours from that tough cup final loss, which we will get to, but I told you off air it would be very limited, very little doom and gloom on this week's conversation. It's very going to be much reflecting on the season as a whole and kind of your experience within that. And in that vein, before we get to the match, before we get to the season, I kind of want to get to know your Aurora story. Everybody involved in Minnesota Aurora has an Aurora story, how they first heard about the club, how they got involved, things like that. And it's all different. And that's I think the coolest thing about it is everybody's Aurora story is just a little bit different, but it all comes together in the fact that you're all part of this close-knit group that did so many great things. So before we get started on all that other stuff, Cassie, tell me your Aurora story.
Okay. So this one's kind of fun for me because it's just something, it was so unexpected. I mean, I follow women's soccer quite deeply through Twitter, at least like what's happening in the soccer world, what's happening in the NWSL, like different leagues with players. And so somehow I was just following along the establishment of the USLW. And then me living in Utah, I've coached there for 2 years, so I've lived there for 2 years now. Minnesota Aurora pops up into my feed, but before it's even Aurora, it's just this idea of a team and they're looking for community owners. And they're at that stage of the founding where they're seeking that, that financial commitment, that home community base, really building up the club. And I was like, wow, this is really neat. I love what they're doing. And I just started following from then on out. And all of a sudden, I'm watching in real time as they're doing the brand polls, the crest polls, the name polls to the fan base on the internet, on Twitter, and that they're announcing their coach hirings, they're announcing player commitments. And so over months, I've been watching this. It feels like, I don't know how long it was, but it feels like it had to have been I see they post a job on Twitter. They say, hey, we're hiring a goalkeeper coach. Submit your application here. And I'm like, well, this is during the summer when I have some time off. Well, different time. I don't have to be on campus for my college coaching job. And I thought, this is neat. How did I just start following this team? And all of a sudden, kind of I don't know, I don't want to call it a specialty coach, but I love being a goalkeeper coach. I'm a head coach at a college, but I love the goalkeeping side of the game as a goalkeeper myself. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to put my name in the hat. And then everything just happened so quickly. We go in, I get an interview. I meet with the coaching staff, have that first interview. Nicole asked me for a second interview, and then boom, offered the job. And I think it was a week and a half turnaround by the time I got offered the job to the start date of the season. So all of a sudden I'm like, okay, where am I going to live? And now I've got a almost 20-hour drive from Salt Lake to Minneapolis. So that's how I started following Aurora and ended up getting involved with the club.
It sounds like you were pretty headstrong, and as soon as you saw the opening, you kind of went for it. Did any of that other stuff enter your mind? How am I going to, where am I going to live? I'm going to be, half a country away over the summer. Did any of that sort of enter your mind as like, oh, this will be a little bit difficult? Or was it just, hey, I want this opportunity. I'll figure out the rest later.
Oh, of course it did. Of course
Yeah.
it I am very planning based and detailed,
Mm.
and I at the same time though I do jump into things
Yeah.
pretty often, and I take like I want experiences, and I want to try things. And
Mm.
so it's kind of like a mix of the two things. I was gonna throw my hat in. I was like, why the heck not?
Mm.
Uh, what, see what happens. What's the
Mm.
worst thing that can happen? You can get told no. And at the end
Mm.
of the day, if that would have happened, I would have moved on. But at the same time, through the interview process, I'm like in the back of my head thinking, okay, it's gonna be quick. If this happens, you've got to figure out housing. You've got to sort all of the college stuff that needs to be done at home over the summer. Make sure the staff is organized, and figure out how I'm going to get out there, when I'm going to get out there, meet the
Mm.
coaching staff, in person, all these different things. And it was quick. It was rapid.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about him, but I think overall it was just kind of a really exciting opportunity to be a part of Minnesota Aurora. I mean, nothing like it.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. When were you hired? When in the process were you hired? Had they sort of started naming players yet, or were you hired at
oh
a point where you could be involved in that sort of player acquisition process, at least on the goalkeeper side?
no, it was all done at that point.
Okay.
So I remember asking a question in my interview. I had looked at the roster beforehand, and um, looked at all the goalkeepers that were on the roster. So one of my questions was, okay, so there are 4 keepers on the roster. Are you looking to add a fifth one? Just trying to think about how many I would be working with,
Mm.
if I had the role. And so like I said, I think it was literally a 10 to 14 day turnaround from the time I got offered the job to arriving here on May. I arrived on May 8th. We started on May 9th. We had our first practice, I
Wow.
believe. Yeah. So I, yeah, it was very end of April, and it happened quick. So everything was in place as far as a brand new club in its inaugural season could be in place. You never knew what the unexpected things were going to be, but we had our base of players.
Mhm.
We now had our staff, and it was like, okay, what's next? The season. Let's go.
So literally 3 months, maybe a little less from getting hired on, or being in that process. Here we are talking
Yeah.
about after the season's over, sort of reflecting on all that.
Yeah. I
Now
think
let's get
my
in.
interview,
Sorry, go
oh, I
ahead.
was going to say, yeah, I think my interview was like 3 months ago to the day.
Wow,
So,
that's incredible. It just is a testament to how well the organization was able to navigate this process, considering how quick everything went. And I mean, the season just goes like that. It's a month and a half and it's over,
yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just incredible to see how things came together, and to hear the stories like yours about how the staff and this team came together is very, very cool. This is probably the not so fun part, but we are going to touch on the match last night, the USLW League final, where you guys did fall to South Georgia Tormenta, the final score being 2-1. Take me through sort of the emotions of the day leading up to a match like that. I was talking to Andrea Yoke after the match last night, and she goes, yeah, I spent all week trying to pretend that it was just a regular match, knowing full well that it wasn't. Was that sort of the same for you, Cassie? Sort of what were those
Gosh.
emotions leading up?
Yeah, it just felt like it took forever to get to game day.
Yeah.
The other ones felt like they came quick. And then
Mhm.
this was just like a drawn out period of time. I was just like, when is it going to be the day? When is it going to be the day? And the clock just kept ticking so slowly. So that, I think, built the anticipation around the game and built the excitement. It I don't know, it was just like, I'm not sure if it's so hard to so quickly process all of those emotions,
Mhm.
after the game, but a lot of excitement. I'm a
Yeah.
pretty high energy person. So I'm always bouncing around. I have a hard time sitting down. I'm
Mhm.
very loud and upbeat. And so I'm just like itching to get to the stadium. We have I probably get there at 3:30 on a game day when we kick at 7. And I'm itching to be there,
Mhm.
walk out into the field. But then once you step onto the field, it kind of did just feel like a game. It just felt like a game of soccer. And here we go, we're
Mhm.
preparing. And I
Yep.
felt prepared. I felt ready, felt excited. I wouldn't say there was a tremendous amount of nerves,
Mhm.
um, but definitely a lot of desire as well. I
Yeah.
was just so stoked,
Yeah.
big on stoked to see, the wonderful young women on this team have this opportunity and to play in this league and in front of our fans and community. And
Mhm.
that was that. So there was something a little bit different about that day is that TCO started letting fans in like a half hour early.
Mhm.
And so what we've experienced before is that once the game rolls around, it's still pretty sparse in the stands, because
Mhm.
people are at the gate trying to get in, waiting their
Yep.
turn in line. And then, 25 minutes in, it kind of fills out. And then it's like, okay, yeah, we've got another sellout crowd. But this time it was like we walk out and the coaches take our seats, our players are, waiting to come on the field. And this place is already pretty full and it's already pretty loud. And that felt different. That was noticeable.
I mean, just walking up to the press box myself, I'm there, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes before the game, and I just see hundreds, thousands of people tailgating the parking lot, another 50 to 100 people already kind of flooding towards the gates, and it's like, man,
Yep.
like this is I mean, full well knowing this going in, but it's like this is a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have
This is
Ebs sort of posting on Twitter like "Good luck, Aurora," or like "On the way to the match," going to cheer on Aurora, and it's this crazy sort of coming together of like all the support for this team all season long, and then you just see it in full force for that W League final, almost 6,500 in the stands. Pretty incredible. Um, as far as the match itself, Cassie, obviously it didn't go your guys' way, but I mean, it was a very well played match on both sides, very end to end. As a goalkeeper's coach, I'm sure it makes it very nervy for you,
yeah.
seeing all those chances both ways. Just talk to me about your feeling on the match itself, specifically how Sarah Fuller was able to play between the posts, just made some crucial saves to keep Aurora level, and then in it till the very end when something had to give either way, and it unfortunately gave the way of Tormenta. But just talk about how you felt about her performance, and not only in the match, but obviously all season long, and how crucial she's been.
Yeah. Well, first thing I want to say is that although the loss was incredibly tough and we're also disappointed and it hurts, I did end that night thinking, what a final
Yeah.
we just played. Like, what a show we just put on for our fans, for the women's soccer community, for the city, for the Twin Cities area. Like, what a game. You know, we that game was fun. It
Mm-hmm.
was high octane. There was good soccer. There were insane goals. I mean, Addie Simmons' goal that she
Unreal.
scored was unreal. And to their credit, Tormenta's game-winning goal, that strike, that
Very good.
finish was incredible. So to
Mm-hmm.
have two really amazing goals and good soccer and a good atmosphere in a championship game like that, I think just provides so much fuel to women's soccer and what
Mm-hmm.
this league is trying to do, what we're trying to do with Aurora and the growth of the women's game. So I really just wanted to touch on that first because I think it was a huge positive of
100%.
the day. Now back to Sarah. Sarah is a gamer, man. I mean, I think this entire postseason she's been absolutely big time. Some of the saves she's pulled out have been. I'm I told you I was excitable. I'm up and down the sideline, like running with my arms up, fist pumping, celebrating
Yeah.
her saves because, oh my goodness, some of the stuff she's pulled out. And I
Mhm.
mean, not only that, it's not only the save she's making, but all of a sudden she gets the ball at her feet, pushes it forward, hits a line drive down the field, and we're in an attacking position. It's like she
Yep.
almost gets a hockey assist. And
Yep.
like to have a goalkeeper that can be on both sides of that is fun. So I think Sarah had a stellar season and a stellar postseason. And yeah, it's naturally a little bit, I think, stressful, in a game when you're
Mhm.
facing an opponent that's putting some stuff on frame, making some dangerous situations. But I think that there's just so much trust in Sarah and in our back line as well, and in what the team was willing to do. That it kind of helps us relax and helps me relax as a goalkeeper coach, knowing that like, hey, we're okay. Like we've got it. We've got a stellar player in net right now for us. And I think that Sarah has just approached this summer like with such an open mindset to learning and just to having fun and growing as a player. And I loved seeing what she was committed to translate onto the field because it was all her, you know?
You can say you're excitable, Cassie, but you really, I don't know if you can really prove you're excitable until you get back-to-back yellow cards and then get sent off in a cup final. But well, what was your reaction to that situation? I mean, it was their goalkeeper's coach who got sent off. As a goalkeeper's coach yourself, what was your reaction to that particular moment? That was just, we didn't know what was necessarily happening in the press box, and then I started to put the pieces together, and I was just like, wow, what just like a crazy new element to add to an already insane final.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on that too much.
Yeah,
It
that's
happened so
fine.
quickly. It happened so
Yeah.
quickly. I was a little bit stunned. Um,
Mhm.
and taken aback, like, wait, did I just see that correctly? But I
Yeah.
mean, I'm excitable, but I've never been carded before myself as a player or a coach. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
as a goalkeeper, you're not in many situations where you would be.
Mhm.
Um, but I I don't foresee that happening in my future.
There you go. I'm glad we could get that on the record, Cassie. Yeah,
And you
so
can hold me to it.
yep, I'll hold you accountable, don't worry. Yeah, I mean, obviously Sarah has just been that brick wall all season long, and even in stoppage time, just making a couple saves to make sure the game went to extra time was just incredible to watch. So let's move back to sort of reflecting on the season as a whole. Andrea, I pulled her aside after the game last night and asked her a few questions, and we'll get that audio out there soon. But one of the things she mentioned is like everything that happened this season far surpassed our expectations. Ticket sales, merch sales, support, everything that goes along, player development, even a lot of the players she mentioned, developed far beyond their wildest expectations. What were your expectations coming in as to what this team could do? Obviously, you knew them from the social media presence, and they had sort of solidified themselves as sort of a big deal and a team that wants to be more than that average new soccer team, sort of wanting to expand that and be more. And you obviously were well aware of that. But what were your sort of expectations coming in for the team and what you would experience during the season with Aurora?
Yeah, great question. So I think that was my initial expectations were really further developed throughout my interview process and in conversations with Nicole. I think that it was very obvious that the standard was to compete and to have success on paper in the season. As far as our performance, and moving beyond that, deeper than that, it was this: we were going to have a huge investment into doing this the right way, into approaching training sessions, the intensity of the training sessions, managing the team and the performance environment. Like it's pre-professional, but we wanted to run this, I don't know if it's under like run a tight ship, but
Yeah.
we wanted to do things in a way that valued, the position we've been put in,
Mhm.
that revered and respected the community support and the morale around Aurora. So there's this,
Mhm.
we went into it with this huge like motivation of, we've been given this great opportunity to work with such a supported team,
Mhm.
something incredible, something very unique to
Yeah.
work with that. And just this commitment to see how far we can go with it and to perform and to, you know, try to do things the right way. As I already said. So
Yeah, I mean, there's some pre-professional teams and amateur teams that do run a tight ship and do things well, but as somebody who's covered pre-professional and amateur soccer, I can tell you there's some experiences that leave me scratching my head. So yeah, I think it was very evident from the beginning that you guys wanted to be a little bit more and do a little bit more and have a little bit of a more solid reputation, and obviously you guys have done all that and more coming in. When you think about this season in the summer, Cassie, what's that first memory or that first thought that pops into your head when you're reflecting on the season as a whole?
oh, there's not a first one.
Mm.
It If I had to say a word to describe it, it was joy. It's joy,
Mhm.
and like that's deeper than fun. Like we had fun.
Mhm.
We had a lot of fun. The
Yeah.
the fans, the founders, the community owners, the volunteers, the staff, everyone knows that we had fun, but I think that there's this feeling of deep joy around the love of the game and coming out and playing and putting our all into it. And so if I'm thinking about the season, I'm thinking about that joy, that joy that I felt, that joy that I've seen grow and flourish in other players, seeing staff like really come into themselves later on in the season and just like have big personalities. Um, so I think of all the moments that where we felt that joy or where we could see that joy. And that's why I got into coaching really is
Mhm.
I remember being a player in college and just reflecting on the season and thinking, man, it's been amazing to watch my teammates and to feel it myself, like that growth, that love of the game, that development as young women, as athletes, as soccer players, as leaders. And it's like I want to stay involved in that. And I
Mhm.
want to continue in this. And it's just positive feedback for why I got into coaching this
Yeah.
experience. It's just such positive reinforcement. Like, man, there's nothing like this. There's nothing.
Mhm.
And this season was fun with this team. This season was amazing.
Obviously, in the fall, you're going to head back to Salt Lake Community College. Your role as
Yep.
a head coach there. Um, are you going to enter 2022 with what? I guess what are you going to take from this experience and apply now to Salt Lake? Are you going to be doing anything differently or taking any adjusted approach? Based on the experiences that you had this summer.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to kind of what I was just talking about. I mean, our staff at Salt Lake, we value fun and enjoyment
Mhm.
and having an environment that fosters that. And it reinforces that hey, we if we're in a safe and fun environment, like players are going to perform.
Yeah.
Players are going to have that freedom to develop and get better, like you touched on earlier. So I really think that's a key to the environment that we, want to keep creating. I mean, I was a first year head coach. I'm going to my second. And so it's not the environment's not created and at the junior college level, we're a 2-year school. So you kind of have to recreate it every year because half
Yeah.
your roster leaves every year.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for myself, reflecting on this season and how I've experienced, I've I've personally refound my energy. I think I was a little bit the last couple years maybe more mellowed out than I thought I would be and or that I thought I ever was. And I feel more me than I have in a little while. And
Mhm.
I'm so excited to bring that back for, my players, and to have that energy for them, and to inspire the joy in them, and to see them inspire each other and have fun and love the game. So I think I know I'm really excited for that.
As somebody who is in the Twin Cities here and sort of is ingrained in the Twin Cities soccer community, and a lot of us who are, we sort of view Minnesota Aurora in this Twin Cities bubble, and how it's impacting the Minnesota soccer scene, the Twin Cities soccer scene, what it's doing for little girls and young women who are growing up and playing soccer and wanting to play soccer, specifically here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, and in this little area. But as somebody who is coming in from sort of outside that bubble and is going back outside that bubble, have you had any experiences, that maybe prove that Minnesota Aurora is impacting the game beyond Minnesota? Like what do you anticipate having Minnesota Aurora do what they're doing on the pre-professional level,
Yeah.
sort of having that solid presence as a women's soccer team underneath that NWSL, surface? What ramifications do you see that having just for women's soccer as a whole here in America?
Well, so two things. First, I think that what our founders and community owners have done with this team, I'm sure as heck that it's given inspiration to other people around the country
Mhm.
who have a similar idea and want to do something like this.
Mhm.
I think Oakland's there's going to be a new expansion team, Oakland Soul, I believe.
Yep.
I think they have a similar model. I mean, I think we're going to see that pop up, and more and more, and have this kind of Aurora effect with how much success we've had, and maybe those people that have that idea have seen the production of Aurora on the field, the stadium, the fans, the community, and they're like, "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, let's do that. Let's figure out how we can create that within our community." And I think that's going to make the USLW so fun, because it is so community based, kind of homegrown feel to it. And so I think there's a kind of a macro impact as far as
For
the
sure.
women's soccer game. But then it's interesting because there's actually quite a few of us that have ties to Utah or are from Utah. And so I know a lot of people, in the soccer community back in Utah, who have paid more attention to this because
Mhm.
of players from Utah Tech or Utah State, a couple coaches, like, so we've just had kind of inroads laid. People have paid attention. I don't know the impact that has on like the youth, but as
Mhm.
far as the game, I think it helps. And obviously Utah previously has had an NWSL team. So I think um, reflecting on the experience with Utah, they're a community that's also bought into women's soccer. So
And reportedly getting one back in 2024, which is obviously really exciting for that community too.
I hope so.
Fingers crossed that holds up, right?
Yep,
But
knocking on wood. We'll see what
yeah.
actually happens. I know that the new owners have said that. So
Mhm.
we'll see what the league does.
Yeah. So speaking of leagues, obviously the W League will continue to expand and grow. We sort of already know some of these expansion teams are going to be coming into the USL Super League. That'll be starting next season as well. So obviously, the more teams that there are in women's soccer, the more opportunities that this Aurora effect has to continue to spread and grow. So I'm really excited to see that. One final question, Cassie, and again, I really appreciate the time here. Obviously less than 24 hours from the USLW League final there. Are you going to be back for 2023? I mean, I know some of the players, have mentioned that they want to come back. There are some players that are moving on to different collegiate careers. Obviously, there'll be a handful of announcements of Aurora players that'll be turning pro, which is really, really cool. But sort of what are your plans and expectations beyond your college season this year? Have you had those conversations, or is it something you haven't even really thought about yet?
Oh, well, first and foremost, I would love to be involved next year.
Yeah.
And that would be within my plans.
Mhm.
If that's how the cookie crumbles. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you'd be kind of crazy to not want to be involved with
Yeah.
this. I think people are chomping at the bit to be a part of Aurora in all of its, in all parts of the organization. Um, so there's that, but it is, a short season, like you said. So it's just game, training, game, postseason. It's just so quick that there's not space to really think about these things during
Mhm.
such a short season. And then in postseason play, like your focus is on postseason, your focus is on winning the next game and what you have to do to do that. So haven't had those conversations yet, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. Cassie Ulrich, goalkeepers coach for Minnesota Aurora FC and the head coach at Salt Lake Community College. Cassie, again, I can't express my gratitude enough for taking the time to come on tonight. Congratulations on being part of such an excellent first season, inaugural season for Minnesota Aurora. It's something that, will go down in the history books. And obviously every accolade and piece of national media notoriety that this team has gotten over the season has been 100% well earned, and obviously you've been a big part of that on the coaching staff. So thank you for helping Minnesota Aurora become what it is, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy.
All right, guys, we're going to take a 1-minute break here on the show, and when we come back, we'll be talking Minnesota United. Stick around. All right, we are back. Big thanks again to Cassie Ulrich, goalkeepers coach from Minnesota Aurora FC, for starting us off with a little post-Aurora as we broke down Minnesota Aurora's USLW League playoff loss, but more importantly, reacted and reflected on an amazing first season for Aurora in the USLW League. Obviously, their impact on Minnesota soccer as a whole, and the women's soccer game in general, nationwide, worldwide, has been felt and has been well earned. So big congrats to Aurora on an amazing first season. But now it is time to get into the Minnesota United conversation. Not only was there a USLW League final last night, there was also a road match for the Loons at Houston Dynamo. And this team came in pretty depleted. In addition to Kervin Arriaga's absence, Will Trapp's absence, you also lose Ja'Cory Hayes for the season. He got hurt and had to get surgery, broken tibia and fibula in the Everton friendly. So he is out for the year, had to get surgery. So obviously best of luck to him. We're wishing him the best. But that leaves the defensive midfield even more depleted than it already was. You're down your two starters. Now you're down one of your only depth pieces. So that forced Adrian Heath to have to make a major switch last night in his lineup, where he went from the 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3 with Robin Ludd at the, you call it a cam or central defensive mid, whatever you want to call that role, that real central midfield role. Robin Ludd was there. He was flanked by Joseph Rosales and a debuting Nabi Kibenguchi, making his Minnesota United debut on the first team. So it was awesome to see him get in the game. And also, he actually made a pretty big impact over the course of the match too. But obviously Adrian Heath having to do some mixing and matching, trying to put those puzzle pieces together when you're losing not only your defensive midfielders, but you're also without Emmanuel Reynoso, your leading goal scorer, your talisman, your big impact player, the straw that stirs the drink for Minnesota is also out. And as of right now, he's day to day. Obviously, came limping off in the Everton friendly. Didn't look bad at the time, and maybe it is continuing to be a precautionary measure to make sure that he is 100% when you bring him back. And I don't blame Adrian Heath or the coaching staff for that if that is the case. But either way, you're without Reynoso. You're without basically your entire defensive midfield. So you have to make that switch to the 4-3-3. And for the time, in a long time, it actually ended up working out. And Minnesota United got 3 points out of that formation. It's a 2-1 win for the Loons over Houston. Now, if you're watching on the stream and you want to get involved, feel free to leave a question or comment in the chat. Would love to respond to those as we get rolling here. Also, if you're watching, and that's over if you're watching on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave that question or comment. You can go ahead and give us a thumbs up. You can go ahead and tap that bell to be notified whenever we drop a new episode, a new podcast, a new video. You'll get notified of that. Also, if you're watching on Twitter and you want to get involved in the conversation, you're going to have to go over to our YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Twitter and you want to leave that question or comment, just go to youtube.com, search Post Loons, search Soda Soccer, and you will be right there. And your question or comment will be read on the stream tonight. One day after Minnesota United's 2-1 win, their 4th straight MLS win, the first time in their MLS history that they have won 4 straight league matches. Also the first time that they have gotten, I believe it's 16 points in a 6-match span. It's their highest point total ever in a 6-match span for Minnesota. So all good things there. And as you guys are trickling back into the stream here, as you guys are sort of sharing those questions and comments and those thoughts, I'm going to get into my 3 things, my 3 biggest takeaways from that Minnesota United match last night. And my first thing is Bongi breakthrough. It happened, ladies and gentlemen. He is on the board. The South African Bangakuli Hlongwane buries one in the back of the net. And it was a big one, too. It put Minnesota United up 2-0 in the second half. And that was an insurance goal that they would need, as obviously they would concede late, but still end up winning 2-1. But not only was it a big goal, it was an absolutely beautiful goal. As Hansen finds Hlongwane on the right, he just cuts to his left inside the box. And he gets that space. Great 1v1 play here by Bongi to sort of create that space and get that angle. And he fires just an absolute scorcher of a left footer. Buries it in the back of the net. Nothing goalkeeper Steve Clark could do about it. And he is on the board for Minnesota. It's almost too bad that it wasn't at home, because obviously the reaction in Houston wasn't nearly the same as the reaction that goal would get at Allianz Field. But the reaction on Twitter was very, very just full of excitement. Everybody happy that Bongi's on the board. I'm excited that Bongi's on the board. It finally happened. It's beautiful to see. And hopefully that snowball starts rolling in the right direction, because before this, Hlongwane had done everything but put the ball in the back of the net. He had put himself in position after position after position to score goals. And whether it's a header off the line by a defender, whether it's, just a great save, whether it's hitting the post or the crossbar, it just seemed like he was snake bit a little bit in his effort to get that goal and get that first goal and sort of, break that streak, so to speak. And he finally gets it against Houston in a big spot in the second half to double Minnesota United's lead. Just amazing to see for Hlongwane, a guy who's just been working his butt off, really earning that right wing spot, with Robin Lod being moved to the defensive midfield or the attacking midfield, as we saw last night. So just excellent work from Bongi. And that really changed the momentum of the match too. They would need that cushion to get all 3 points, and really kind of gave them continued momentum after an otherwise pretty meh first half. My second thing, Dabasi, man of the match. In the first half, Houston was getting through the midfield with relative ease, obtaining meaningful possession with relative ease. Converting that into goals was a different story, though. And you could credit that to the back line, and specifically that interior back line. I've been very openly critical about this center back pairing this season for Minnesota United. Obviously, by tenure and by performance over their careers, they have earned those spots, Dabasi and Boxall. But there have been we've seen more cracks in that back line, specifically the central part of that back line, than we've seen in years past. And I think we're finally starting to see the age of those center backs start to rear their head a little bit. And that's not saying that Boxall and Dabasi can't be part of Minnesota United moving forward for a long time. That just says that maybe we need to be a little bit more proactive in getting some younger pieces to replace Boxy and Dabasi as those starting roles when the time comes. Because right now you really don't have anybody who can fit that spot. And that's a little bit concerning for me. But last night, Boxall was great, but Dabasi, maybe his best match of the season so far, making critical, absolutely vital interventions, really helping shut down those Houston attacks in the first half. Houston was on the front foot early in the match, and actually we're also on the front foot early in the second half as well, and could have put up 2, 3, 4 goals. But the back line was there. The back line was able to make sure that did not happen. Here's a stat for you. Minnesota's defense blocked 8 shots on the night, but that's not even the most impressive stat. A remarkable 35 clearances for Minnesota. That's insane. 35 clearances on the night for the Loons. Just an excellent defensive effort. Houston had 22 total shots. Dane St. Clair just had to make 3 saves. Think about that. 22 shots from the Dynamo, only 3 saves needed for Dane St. Clair. That's a pretty darn good night from a defensive standpoint. And for my money, the most impressive this back line has looked as a whole all season. Obviously, the fullbacks, DJ Taylor and Kamara Lawrence, have done well. But I don't know if we've really seen that cumulative, impressive effort from the entire back line. But they put it together last night. It's actually the second match in a row where they've looked pretty good, in my opinion. Second league match in a row, I should say. So excellent work by the Minnesota United back line. My third thing on the game tonight is finding a way. Great teams find a way in all sports, find a way to win and get those results even when the odds are stacked against them. And that's something that we really haven't seen from Minnesota United too much. Usually when the chips are down and you say, okay, yeah, we're just looking to get a draw tonight, usually they get that draw, which isn't bad. But this is one of those matches where even though Houston is, I believe, 12th in the West right now, you're missing Reynoso. You're missing arguably your entire defensive midfield aside from a couple pieces. It was really looking like, okay, if we can just get out of Houston with a draw and get a result and at least keep moving in the right direction, that'll be a sufficient result. We'll be happy, right? But to go into Houston depleted like that on the road and find a way to get 3 points out of that, get a win, get a dub, move yourself into third in the Western Conference, that shows some grit. I don't know if grit is a characteristic you could say this Minnesota United team has had in years past, at least from an MLS standpoint. But last night's win, and this is, it's a buzzword. It's, it's not exactly, it's a word that's widely used and maybe overused. But this was a gritty win for Minnesota United. This showed some high character from Minnesota. I think you can also give a lot of credit to Adrian Heath for navigating this as well. Obviously, he gets his fair share of criticism on social media, and I'm not saying that criticism is unwarranted at times. But if you're going to criticize the guy, you also have to credit him when he makes a decision that directly leads to a team's performance. And I thought the way he put that roster together, considering the absences, switching formations, putting Lud at the cam or the central defense midfield, whatever you want to call it, I thought he pressed the right buttons. He absolutely pressed the right buttons with his roster and his lineup construction last night in a situation where I'm sure that was not easy to do. So he gets a lot of credit from me, but obviously credit to the players for showing that grit, for showing that character. and finding a way to get all 3 points. Like I said, this is the first time that Minnesota United has won 4 consecutive MLS matches. We're finally seeing some long-term consistency with this team. And that is also a characteristic that we have not seen from this team. Usually this team has shown brilliance in flashes. They'll win 3 matches in a row, then they'll lose 2 matches in a row, then they'll get a handful of draws, and it's this roller coaster, it seems, every year. But they have enough of those flashes of brilliance that they get up into an advantageous position in the table, they end up making the playoffs. But as far as consistency goes, we haven't seen it stay here. It's usually been like this. But since the international break, since that Miami match, which was now, over a month ago, I believe, we're back to here. We're here. We've been here the whole month of July. Win, 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 win. If you want to count the Everton friendly, another win. Consistent results, consistent impressive performances, consistent matches where you are left thinking, man, that was good. They put it together. Or last night, man, everything was against them. They were on the back foot for a lot of it. They absorbed a lot of pressure, but they found a way to get it done. This has been impressive, this run for Minnesota. Not only just the fact that they have won this many matches in a row, but they've shown a consistent performance. Different guys are contributing. They're putting the ball in the back of the net consistently. It's awesome to see. And I think it's something that Minnesota United fans have sort of been clamoring for and just asking for some consistency. And they're finally getting it. And it comes in the way of 4 straight wins. That's amazing. We finally got a question in the chat here from Matt Garrett. Says, I didn't watch the match. How is Nabi? Nabi was all right. Look, Nabi had not been impressive or reportedly had not been impressive in training. During the stints he's gotten with the second team and in friendlies, he hasn't really looked good either. So that was the big question. How is Nabi going to play? Minnesota United played in a way where they didn't really need him to step up and play this great role in that midfield. Like I said, a lot of this win is credit to the back line, which means that Houston was pretty much able to have their way in the midfield. But when I look at Nabi's performance, and it was something I was paying attention to when I was watching the match back today, I didn't really see anything that stood out in a negative sense either. He didn't necessarily do anything that wowed me, like, wow, that was a great sequence by Nabi. Didn't have any of that, but he also, I don't think he was a liability on the pitch either. And I think when you're talking about what you wanted from Nabi Kiminguchi last night, you just wanted him to not lose the match for you, basically. You wanted him to have a consistent, okay performance. And that's what he put together. He had an okay performance. It was good enough. It was good enough. If you want to be like Matt and drop a question or comment in the chat, feel free to do so. But as you're doing that, I am going to give a major due shout out to our friends over at Pence Homes. If you follow Nate Pence on Twitter, you saw how crazy he was going during the Aurora match last night. And he's also just a huge supporter of Minnesota soccer as a whole. He's a Minnesota United supporter. He has supported Minneapolis City, Minnesota Aurora. Our friends over at Equal Time Soccer, who do an awesome job at covering the women's game. Their Aurora coverage this season was absolutely awesome. But to get back to Pence Homes, Nate and his team, if you're buying or selling in the St. Paul and Minneapolis area, they're the team you should go with to help you get that done. The market, you can tell it's crazy. It's fluctuating. Some people say it's going to crash. Some people say it's going to keep going up. Nate knows, okay? Do not listen to these people you're seeing on Twitter who aren't Nate Pence. Nate knows how to navigate this market and how things are going to go and the trends that are actually happening. And he can help you get top dollar for your house and also help you get into a new house at an affordable rate as well. So whether you just like regular houses or you like BLM gay houses, Nate Pence and his team at Pence Homes are the ones you should go with in St. Paul and Minneapolis. So if you're in those areas and you're looking to buy or sell or both, make sure you go to pencehomes.com, or email Nate directly. His name, Nate, Nate, at the URL right there, pencehomes.com. I know how meteorologists feel now because I'm seeing myself in reverse. So, like, this is what they do when they're pointing at the storm systems and such. I kind of get my meteorologist on right now. I'm doing the pointing here. But anyways, the point is, if you want to contact Pence Homes, it's free to have that conversation. So why not do it? pencehomes.com, P-E-N-T-Z homes.com, or email Nate directly, N-A-T-E at pencehomes.com. Cannot thank our friends over at Pence Homes enough for supporting what we're doing here. SodaSoccer.com and the Post Loons Minnesota United post-game show coming at you a day late tonight. Now we're going to get into the match moments. And I don't have a ton on here, but just some of the big moments from the match. So obviously in the early going, it was all Houston early on. They had a lion's share of the possession. They were cutting through the midfield. They were getting into really good attacking situations. And that's where the back line came into play. If the back line didn't have the performance that they had, we might have been looking at 2-0 or 2 or 3 goals for Houston at halftime. But due to the performance of the back line, due to the defensive effort that they were able to put in, we saw Minnesota United actually out in front at the end of the first half. But how they got in front in the first half was a beautiful goal from Franco Fragapane, and that's in first half stoppage time. And this is a huge momentum shift for Minnesota after that lethargic first half hour. Paid off just before the halftime whistle. They found their footing at about the 30-35 minute mark. You could tell they were starting to turn things around a little bit, not be so much on the back foot, not be so much on their heels. And it pays off here in first half stoppage. Bongi navigates through some tight space in the middle. Fragapane times his run perfectly, getting in behind the Houston defense, and Bongi puts the pass on a dime. Steve Clark is actually coming out for this one, but Franco does well to avert the goalkeeper and tuck away the empty netter to put the Loons ahead at the break. To score in first half stoppage is such a huge momentum changer. Minnesota United has been on the opposite side of that coin many a time, and you can tell. And believe me, we do the gift party at halftime every single match. We know what the gifts are going to look like when they concede in first half stoppage. But scoring in first half stoppage absolutely changes the whole momentum and puts things in Minnesota United's favor, despite being on the back foot for basically the entirety of the first half leading up to that point. Early in the second half, Dane St. Clair comes up huge with a big save in the 49th. It was Houston's substitute striker, Sebastian Ferrer, who got the effort. And Houston was back out on the front foot at the beginning of the second half, but that didn't necessarily last as long in the second half as it did in the first. Minnesota United was able to sort of even that tide a little bit after that Dane St. Clair save in the 49th. And then the 72nd, this is where we get the lead doubler, courtesy of one Bongi Klangwane. As I mentioned, Hansen gets all the space he wants approaching the box. Not sure what Houston was doing in the midfield, but just acres of space for Hansen to work with here. Slides a nice pass on Klangwane inside the 18 on the right. Bongi makes a move to his left and lets a bullet fly, finds the back of the net. It's the South Africans' first goal as a Loon, but more importantly, the goal gave Minnesota a 2-goal advantage late on. And that's a 2-goal advantage they would need to lock in the win, because in the 85th, Houston gets on the board. Viva Fafa Pico. He brings the Dynamo within a goal with a nice Bongi-esque strike, another bullet. Nothing DSC could do. But in the end, the Loons were able to lock it down after giving up that first goal. They didn't give up an equalizer. 2-1 the final. And all in all, just a really, really good effort from the Loons, despite all the factors working against them. You're on the road. You are down your best player. You're down many a defensive midfielder, but it doesn't matter. You find a way to get the job done. You find a way to get the 3 points. Just an excellent, excellent effort from the Loons. So now we move on here. Actually, let's get into the stats before we look at what's on tap. The stats are pretty interesting because they're indicative of what happened over the course of the match. Houston dominated possession. 73% to the Loons' 27%. That is a vast possession difference. 27% possession for Minnesota United. And it looked every bit of that during the match. It looks like Houston had the ball basically the entire time, but In soccer, it's not how long you have the ball. It's what you do when the ball is at your feet. And Minnesota United took their chances and took their opportunities. So credit to them for it. Dynamo also had 22 total shots, 4 on target. Loons ended up with 9 shots and 3 on frame. Minnesota's defense, as I mentioned, blocked 8 shots on the night and notched a remarkable 35 clearances. DSC, 3 saves. Think about that. Dynamo, 22 shots. Dane St. Clair, 3 saves. 35 clearances for the back line. Insane. And then that XG. Houston did have a 1.53 XG to Minnesota's 1.3. But it is Minnesota who comes away with the 2-1 victory. More questions and comments coming in the chat. Matt says, I thought the finish by Fragapane was really class. Cheeky move to beat the keeper and then quick timing to get it in the net. Yeah, I mean, look, credit to the pass by Bongi, but this is also, I think, a move that Fragapane doesn't make a month ago, 2 months ago, early in the season. This sequence from Fragapane was indicative of the confidence that he has gained over this last stretch. Fragapane was not a guy playing with confidence in the early portion of the season. And you saw how Minnesota United's attack struggled for it. The defense could key in on Reynoso. And when defenses can fully focus their attention on Reynoso, knowing that not a lot of the other attacking options can hurt him, that's where Reynoso kind of gets that's where they're able to make Reynoso ineffective. But when you have a Franco Fragapane, who is just a terror on the left-hand side, it changes things for his confidence. And you see that payoff even in a match where Reynoso's out. He can sort of take the reins and make things happen. Great pass by Bongi, but also a great alert move by Fragapane. Really class, as you mentioned, Matt, to evade an oncoming keeper. And once you do that, it's an empty netter. If you think of it as a hockey analogy, it's an absolute empty netter. Franco buries it for that initial goal. That did so much for this team after being on the back foot for a majority of the first half. So, Matt, that is a great shout on the Franco goal. Yeah, just excellent work by the Loons to get those 3 points despite everything working against them. We're going to look at what's on tap here in a second. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at 9th Street Soccer and Coffee. 801 South 9th Street in Minneapolis is where you can find them. They were out once again at the Minnesota Aurora USLW League Final last night, handing out those cold drinks. And hopefully we'll be able to see them out on the town in the Minnesota soccer community a little bit more this summer. But if you want to just go check them out and see what 9th Street's all about, I highly recommend you do so. You don't even have to be a soccer player either, or somebody who's interested in playing soccer. If you are, that's great because they have affordable pickup all week long. Just check out the times at 9thstreetmpls.com. But if you're not, you're just somebody who's interested in soccer, you want to kind of be in that soccer environment, head over to 9th Street. They're open every day. You can maybe, if you're the work from home type who can afford to work from a coffee shop, make 9th Street your coffee shop that you work out. They have soccer on the TVs all the time when there's soccer on. They had they're going to continue to have watch parties for Minnesota United during certain road matches throughout the season. They've had Minneapolis City watch parties. They've had, they've been heavily involved with Minnesota Aurora, being on site with a tent at TCO Stadium, handing out those cold drinks pretty much all season long. They're just somebody who really cares about the Minnesota soccer community like we do here at Soda Soccer. So if you are also in that Minnesota soccer community and you care about it as well, consider supporting our friends over at 9th Street. Just head over to visit them, 801 South 9th Street in Minneapolis, or just check them out online, 9thstreetmpls.com. You can see there it's NINTHSTREET MPLS.com. I'm getting better at the pointing. You can also follow them on Twitter and Instagram at 9th Street MPLS, 9th and Street spelled out, just like you see it in the URL. Big thanks to 9th Street Soccer and Coffee for supporting what we're doing here at Soda Soccer and the Post Loons postgame show, 801 South 9th Street in Minneapolis, or online at 9thstreetmpls.com. I know we've done things a little bit differently tonight, guys, so I appreciate the interaction and the viewership. We're a day late. We also had the Post Aurora show before this too. If you're just now tuning in, I just want to say it once again, huge congrats to what Minnesota Aurora was able to do this season. Making it all the way to the USLW League Final in their first season as a club. They did fall to South Georgia Tormenta 2-1 in that final, but I mean the club and the organization has nothing to hang their head about. An incredible season, incredible cup final. Big thanks to goalkeepers coach Cassie Ulrich for joining us on the Super Show a little bit earlier. Yes, it's been a great summer for Minnesota soccer, and yesterday was just a great night for Minnesota soccer. Even with the Minnesota Aurora loss, the atmosphere at TCO was incredible. It was an amazing match. And outside of that, you also get a Loons win out of it too. Just a really, really cool time to be involved in the Minnesota soccer scene. And we appreciate all the support that we're getting over at Soda Soccer with our post-game shows and our podcasts and our content on the website. It really means a lot to have your guys' support. So thank you guys so much for doing that and for showing up to a day late podcast, kind of a combined podcast again tonight as well. So what's on tap for Minnesota United as we move forward here? Well, next up, they get the week off, and then they'll be hosting Portland at Allianz Field for a Saturday matinee this coming Saturday, the 30th. Timbers are on a bit of a run themselves. They haven't lost since prior to the international break, and we talked about how the Loons have 14 goals in these last 6 matches. Portland has 13 in their last 6 matches. So they're finding a way to get the ball in the back of the net and on a good run of form as well. They beat San Jose 2-1 yesterday. So not going to be easy for Minnesota, but you're back at home. And Minnesota's on one of those runs right now where if they're at Allianz Field in front of the Wonderwall, you would pick them against anyone right now with the way that they're playing. They're third in the West. They've earned that spot with their run of play. And it's not just third, with games, other teams having games in hand. This is a legitimate third on points and points per game. So they're on a good run. So is Portland. Hopefully it's a really good match on Saturday. I will not be able to watch, unfortunately. It's been a long time since I haven't been able to watch 2 straight Loons matches live. Obviously, I was out at TCO for the Aurora USLW League final last night. On Saturday, I am going to a wedding with the wife. So it's our first wedding as a married couple too. So I'm pretty excited about that. But Jacob Schneider, John Marthaler, the Loons team at Soda Soccer will have you covered. And then we'll do probably another day after post-Loons post-game show on Sunday evening next week. So be on the lookout for that. But that will do it for this edition of Post Loons and Post Aurora. This has been our first ever Soda Soccer Super Show. I really appreciate everybody who has tuned in. Huge thank you to Minnesota Aurora goalkeepers coach Cassie Ulrich for joining us a little bit earlier. She was amazing. Huge congrats to her and the Minnesota Aurora team once again on an amazing first season. And huge congrats to Minnesota United on that 2-1 win last night. Hopefully they can keep it going on Saturday against the Timbers. Thank you guys again so much. One more comment. Who is it from? Is it Matt? Matt. He says good stuff. Thanks. Thank you, Matt, for joining and watching and contributing. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the interaction, all the viewership, guys. Thank you so much. If you haven't checked us out at sodasoccer.com, SOTA soccer.com, please do so. Your new home for soccer coverage in the North. Minnesota United, Minnesota Aurora, Minneapolis City, everything going on in the NPSL, the UPSL, community soccer scene. We got it covered there at sodasoccer.com. And also, if you're liking the content and you want to support what we're doing, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/sodasoccer. You can support our work for as low as $3. So please consider doing that if you want to support what we're doing. It'd be very much appreciated. And we'll be back for another edition of the 10,000 Pitches podcast this week and another edition of Post Loons, probably coming away a day after again next Sunday, following Minnesota United Saturday matinee with the Portland Timbers. Have a great week, guys. I appreciate it. We'll talk next weekend at some point. Enjoy it. And thanks again.